Hi, welcome to the Hammond Wing, named after the famous scholar and teacher who began the 21st century Age of Enlightenment among history students at a little-known high school in Belton, Missouri. Our new exhibit, Revolutionizing Japan, A New Look, is right this way.
At the beginning of our exhibit is the pre-industrial age, the period before Japan began its own industrial revolution. Prior to the Meiji Restoration, Japan used a feudal system of government, with the shogun and emperor being the rulers. The emperor ruled Japan and the shogun was the military leader. For hundreds of years, the shogun consolidated most of the power from the emperor, who became basically a figurehead. A step down from the shogun was the series of military nobles, daimyos, who were the leaders of the samurai class and the owners of property. A samurai was a warrior who would battle with other samurai in politically focused battles between daimyos, which would end with one samurai dead and one daimyo owning the other's property and slaves. The samurai also was the main group allowed to carry samurai swords, called katanas. A katana is a long cutting sword. It is on average 2 1/3 feet long, with a sharp edge and a small upwards curve. The blade is focused on close quarters combat, such was the style back during early modern Japan. It was one of the blades that the samurai, or the Japanese warrior class, wore, the other being the daisho. The Hammond Wing has on display a real katana, used by Tokugawa Yoshinobu back in the mid-19th century.
Tokugawa Yoshinobu was the last shogun of feudal Japan. His leadership was during a time of strife in the Japanese Empire. Citizens were starving because of the diminishing number of people tending the fields, and daimyo and samurai were extremely indebted to a growing merchant class. Yoshinobu attempted reforms, like canceling debts that daimyo and samurai owed to merchants and forcing city residents to go out and grow rice. But nothing worked. He was forced to retire from his position of military leadership, and the first stage of Japanese industrialization and participation on the global stage was complete.
The second stage of Japanese modernization took place in the Meiji Restoration. The Meiji Restoration was a period of revolution and reinvention that lasted from 1868 to 1912 and caused the Industrial Revolution. It began when an American commodore named Matthew Perry sailed in 1853 for Japan and demanded that the government of Japan begin trade with Europe. Our exhibit features Matthew Perry's actual warship, the head of the naval fleet that approached Japan. He threatened to use all 73 of his fleet's cannons to ensure that the Japanese government opened their ports. However, it still took 2 years for him to succeed, and for a long time, Japan continued to be partially isolated, mostly just because of geographical location. Perry's arrival is what kick-started the Meiji Restoration, which made huge changes in Japan's government and its social structure. The boy emperor Mutsuhito, later called Emperor Meiji, became a true leader of Japan rather than a figurehead, with the defeat of Shogun Yoshinobu. The new government established a coalition of advisors to Meiji, composed of former daimyo, samurai, and other nobles.
The Meiji Restoration brought about extreme social changes. All former social classes were abolished. The samurai class, housing some 1.2 million persons, was successfully banned with little resistance. Additionally, the ex-samurai could no longer carry swords. The daimyo's lands, of which there were over 300 sections, were all collapsed into government land.
Some of the samurai, however, did not agree with the new government's actions. Many believed that this complete government turnover was not necessary and wanted to maintain their former power. This brought about the Satsuma Rebellion during 1877, the largest armed rebellion against Japan during the Meiji period. Some 12,000 samurai were involved in several clashes with the new centralized government's army. Eventually, all rebels were slaughtered and the new emperor continued without resistance towards a more modernized future.
The journey through our exhibit continues with Japan's Industrial Revolution and post-Meiji Restoration political movements. After the Meiji Restoration, Japan saw many economic changes, including its very own Industrial Revolution. Japan's removal from isolation gave European countries the opportunity to invest their resources in Japan, a huge economic boon. The endorsement of industrialization by the newfound Japanese government also played a large role in its rapid development. With production of textiles, labor shifted from individualized artisan work to mass-produced items from factories. In our exhibit, we have a genuine textile from the Industrializing Japan on display. This rare piece was woven by one of the many groups of Japanese women in the early 20th century, and many like it were exported everywhere, from Europe to China to the United States. The economic prosperity caused by industrialization brought about several zaibatsus, or Japanese business conglomerates, that monopolized different sections of the economy. This represented a continued push for economic prosperity that was introduced during the earlier Meiji Restoration.
With the Industrial Revolution came a great push for citizens' rights and participation in government. With help from his coalition of nobles, Emperor Meiji established a three-branch style of government like we have here in the United States of America: judicial, legislative, and executive. The judicial branch was a series of courts enforcing laws outlined by the emperor, who could change any law he liked and issue new ones without any check or balance. The courts dealt with Japanese citizens and legal issues. The legislative branch contained the council and the imperial diet. The council itself had another chamber titled the private council, who were more entitled and wealthy officials. The imperial diet was split into two sections: the House of Representatives, or the elected officials, and the House of Peers, who contained certain taxpayers and some hereditary roles. The emperor could get rid of elected persons and add in peers. Both houses advised the emperor, like the senior statesmen also did. Finally, the executive branch was comprised of the cabinet, which held the prime minister and other advisors. The emperor was technically in all three branches. He alone controlled the army, which could conscript citizens at any time. While Japanese citizens didn't have as much freedom and government control as Americans at that time, the Meiji Constitution was certainly a step in the right direction for civil rights in Japan. And that wraps up our exhibit, Revolutionizing Japan, A New Look. See all of this and more when you visit the extraordinary new Hammond Wing at the Smithsonian Museum and take a journey into the modernization of Japan.